Are you ready to listen to my dad Joe and Uncle Justin talk about sports? Now on with the show.
The Joe Mays and J-Raff Show is brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop, which have been serving the greater West Lawn area delicious food for over 70 years. You are listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
Boring.
A weekly podcast about sports since 2011.
Don't you ever get tired of being wrong all the time?
With a focus on football.
36-yard line of Philly, shotgun snap to Hurts, dropping back, only one person rushing, Hurts looking, standing still, winding up, long pass, it lands at the 20, no one is there, zeros on the clock, it's over, the Chiefs have won, Super Bowl 57 on a game-winning field goal, trailing at 10. At the halftime stop, 24-14, they go on to win 38-35. What a game.
Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, here for episode 388 on Sunday, December 10th, 2023. And back with me this evening is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
So my dad already was banging the drum to have Paul Roberts replace you. Before we even got on air last week, he's like, get that Raffoff off the show. Paul needs to be your permanent host. And I said I would let you know that. I wanted to say it on the show last week, but I figured out pretty quickly you weren't able to tune in live.
Right? Yeah.
Because I was giving you crap at the beginning, and you didn't text me, so I was like, I don't think he's able to watch. So I'll wait to let you know live on the air next week. Because my dad was like, "Did you let Justin know what I said? Did you let him?"
Yes.
So there's we've had a petition in the past to have Natalie be my new co-host. Obviously, we always hear from our dads that they are such a big draw when they're on the show.
Yes.
I think they're tuning in to see which one says something stupid first.
Yeah.
So that's what I always tell them. Like they just want to joke. They just want to be able to laugh. So no, we love when we have the dads on. We love when they have Paul on. That was great last week. And Justin, I do want to start before we dive into the NFL. I want to get your opinions on what happened with the college football playoff last week, because I'm still on the fence, going back and forth. I let it be known before the selections happened and then afterwards, and then with Paul, that I don't like what happened, but I do understand it. And I think I'm back to where I started. I still think they should have picked Florida State at 4 over Alabama. And I know if Paul's watching this now, he's probably like, that's not what we talked about last week. And you're right. I said that they got the 4 best teams, and is that what we want to see? Yes, and is that what it's in, like, their whatever it says in the CFP bylaws, they're supposed to pick the 4 best teams? But that is so subjective.
See, I don't think they can hide behind that argument. I agree, and at first that's kind of how I was too. Like, I thought Florida State deserved to be in and quote unquote should be in, but I understood why they picked Alabama. And if you're picking Alabama, in my opinion, you have to pick Texas.
Right.
The problem is the whole, like, everybody liked to run and be like, oh, well, Florida State's, couldn't do anything against Louisville. Yes, but they were going to have their second string quarterback back for the other one, so they weren't going to be playing with a third string, like, true freshman quarterback in the playoff.
Right.
The other part is, if you're going with the 4 best teams, like, you're going to tell me that Georgia isn't better than some of the teams that make it? Like, I think Georgia would be favored, like, because everybody's like, well, Florida State would be a big underdog to all the teams. I think Georgia would be favored over Texas. I think Georgia would be favored over Washington. And honestly, Georgia might be favored over Michigan. I watched Michigan in their conference championship game, and the offense was not good.
Right.
And the defense is hard to get a read on because Iowa's terrible.
Not to derail this conversation, but did you see in the Heisman voting, J.J. McCarthy got a vote for first place?
It doesn't surprise me. Probably Detroit Free Press. Like,
So-
but like, I just, I don't understand. Like, and this is my issue with it all the time. They are so inconsistent to when they apply the criteria from year to year, but also within the year. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And they seem to apply some criteria in some scenarios and other criteria in other scenarios based on what justifies their decision, not using a set of guidelines to make their decisions.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Some year it's winning all your games matters. Some year it's conference champion matters, even if that means
Right.
that, like Alabama, they beat an undefeated team.
Well, some years it's you're out of conference. Well, Florida State beat 2 SEC teams
Yeah.
out of conference.
Including the one that has the Heisman Trophy
Right.
winner.
Right. So, like, it's frustrating to me because, and this is another thing, and you haven't seen a whole lot of it recently because they can't make this argument now. But a lot of people who were angry about the expanded playoff are like, it's going to devalue the regular season. No, you can't say that.
They just did
That
that.
argument is gone. The regular season does not matter now in the 14 playoff because an undefeated team of a Power 5 conference was just left out. Regular season does not matter. It doesn't matter. And so
I think that's what is most frustrating. Not that the regular season doesn't matter. What's most frustrating is they've decided that, quote, experts can determine who would win at a neutral site game.
right.
And sports has told us forever that you cannot do that. Well, there's literally a quote from Dennis. Is it Dennis Green or Herm Edwards?
Which
No,
one?
it was Herm Edwards.
It's Herm Edwards. You play to win the
You
game.
play to win the game. And then there's the sports cliche, and that's why they play the game.
Right.
That's why they play the game. Because how
Right.
often do we see
Well-
underdogs win?
Right. You're like, oh, well, Florida State would be underdogs to all these teams. Okay. Alabama was an underdog to Georgia in that game.
Washington was an underdog to Oregon.
A 9.5
Yeah,
point
nearly
underdog
double-digit.
after beating them in the regular season too. Like,
so Vegas knows a lot. They don't know everything.
no, and it just stinks. It just stinks.
It does. And I said this to Paul when we were not really debating it, but we were talking it out. I said, if Penn State was in Florida State's, I would be going nuclear.
Oh,
I would be, just
Right.
raining
Yeah.
fire down upon
Yeah.
everyone. I would be livid.
Yeah.
And I don't like Florida State
Right,
at all.
exactly.
But I understand why they're frustrated and
Oh, yeah.
upset. Like, I completely get it.
Right.
And I completely understand. And I know there are some, like, you have the SEC haters who didn't want an SEC team to make it. But then you also have the SEC apologists who are like, how could you play a playoff without an SEC team?
Right.
Well, you didn't prove you should have been there.
Right. Exactly.
You know?
Georgia's best win was against Missouri. That's their only good win.
And for a while, they looked pedestrian. They
Yeah.
looked beatable.
Yeah.
And then that's what Alabama did. But then Alabama lost early in the season to Texas.
Alabama shouldn't have beat
They
Auburn.
shouldn't have beat Auburn.
Right.
And Auburn just lost by 21 to New Mexico State a few weeks ago.
Right.
So, and this actually can segue perfectly into our talk about professional football.
Right.
I don't think it's been a banner year for football.
No, it's been exciting, and we've said there's lots of viewers.
Yeah,
it's
well,
not great.
NFL's
It's not
setting
great
records.
football.
It seems like every week there's a new viewership record being set. But in terms of the game on the field, both collegiately and professionally, I do not think there are elite teams out there.
Right.
Maybe great teams, maybe great, very
Yeah.
good, sure,
Yeah.
good and very good,
and
yeah.
teams that could go on a run at the end and be that at the end of the season.
Right.
But, like, it's not like we have one of these teams. Like, I don't see a team right now that I'm like, oh, this team is walking their way to the Super Bowl. Like we've seen in some years where it's like, is anyone in either conference going to be able to step up and beat Team X? You know, like,
which for a while have been the Chiefs or the
Right,
Patriots
right.
in the AFC, NFC.
right? You'd see the Patriots going with like 3 losses on the year, and the Colts going with 2 losses on the year, knowing that they might meet, and just kind of seeing like what's going to happen. But
it's an odd year for sure. I mean, the Eagles are 10-2, but I think everyone is on the same page that they're not as strong as they were last year. At least they're not playing that
Defense
way.
isn't. Defense is like 24th, ranked 24th in points per game.
And I'm sure some people will come at me and be like, oh, the 49ers had a 3-game losing streak.
Right.
Like, and they looked bad.
And
during
lost
that
to some
3-game
bad
losing
teams.
streak. Yeah, they didn't. What wasn't like the Vikings, the Browns? I forget who the third one was.
Yeah,
I think that's who it was.
Yeah, it was.
So teams are gonna have bad weeks. Sure, losing 3 in a row tells me you're not an elite team.
Right.
Maybe they're great. Maybe they'll end up being the best team in the NFL this year. Maybe they'll win the Super Bowl. Maybe no one will touch them the rest of the way. I feel like in the NFC, those are the two teams. Honestly, Dallas wins tonight. You have to include them. I don't think
absolutely.
I don't think you can ignore it anymore.
Right. If they win tonight, they're in the lead for the division.
Right.
And they'd be tied with the Niners, but losing the tiebreaker.
The AFC continues to confound me. Thankfully, my Dolphins haven't had an opportunity to let me down today. They can do that tomorrow still, which I hope they don't. They have to beat the Titans.
You're just going to wear the Victory Monday stuff tomorrow, right?
Oh, gosh. Yes, you know me. That sounds like something I would do. Counting my chickens before the eggs are hatched.
Right.
The AFC is just a mess. I know there's people that are like, it's Ravens. The Ravens should have lost today.
They should have.
Dude,
Marlon Pumphrey almost single-handedly handed
he was
that game.
sliding all over the place.
He gave up the big pass that led him up to midfield. He fell on the next one and gave up the big play. Then he had the interception in the end zone and just drops it.
If the receiver, who I can't remember who it was, because was it DeMarcus Robinson?
No.
Not the one that caught the pass that
are you talking?
Fell on?
Yes.
If he would have gotten his feet and not slipped,
it's the
he
one.
Been gone.
I thought it was the one who played for the Ravens last year. I thought it was the receiver that played for the Ravens last year. But
so I'm not convinced that the Ravens are some like great team.
Good, right. And could be there. But
which is the same thing I feel like I say and other people say about my Dolphins.
Yeah.
Because they are beating up pretty good the teams that they should be doing that to. They're struggling against teams with winning records that they'll end up meeting in the playoffs. Tennessee is not one of those teams. Next week, the Jets are not one of those teams. That's why they need to continue to win. You get to 11-3. I don't care that it doesn't matter to me that you've lost your 3 biggest games. You won the other 11. Every other team in the NFL has lost a bad game. I mean, we just talked about the 49ers, supposedly the best team in the NFL, lost 3 games in a row to 3 teams I don't think they should have lost to. The Eagles lost to the Jets.
Right.
The Cowboys lost to the Cardinals. The Dolphins' 3 losses are all to teams that are probably going to make the playoffs. Bills are iffy. But I still see in power rankings people having the Bills in the top 10 because it's like they just can't shake that the Bills are this bad. Now, the Bills beat the Chiefs today in Kansas City for the 3rd year in a row.
Yeah.
That was also a wacky game, especially at the end. Patrick Mahomes was not happy with the referees. Apparently, didn't help Tony. Kadarius Toney was lined up in the neutral zone, and we see it through all levels of football. Generally, the referee will let you know. I wasn't sure if that happened in the NFL. Right. Apparently, it does, based on what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' reactions say, and what Andy said to reporters after the game. But, had it happened multiple times this game, had the ref told him, I'm not going to keep, reminding you, we don't know any of that. He was clearly lined up in line with or in front of the football once the center had it. It was the right call, but they're talking more about, but he should have been told. We hear that all the time in middle school and high school, refs telling the players you're lined up offside, back up.
Right.
It's supposed to be on the players to ask the refs.
Right.
And then I get more angry when the refs don't respond.
Right.
They're like, am I back far enough? Or I'm supposed to be on. Am I on? And the refs just stand there and then they throw a flag. And it's like, he was asking you because it's an angle thing. Sometimes it's tough to figure out, am I on the line or not? And the ref is supposed to be there to help you. But again, I don't know the level of that in the NFL and what was going on. So that's why Patrick Mahomes was very angry. I thought he was angry at Toney, but it does not appear that was the case. Kadarius Toney lined up off sides. Mahomes hit Travis Kelce down the middle, and I thought he was about to get tackled. Then he pulled a quarterback trip and lateral. I call it a lateral. It was a backwards quarterback pass. Yeah, it was not a toss. He
It looked like the old spot passes. that we
Yeah,
were doing.
exactly. And who waltzed into the end zone then? Who caught that?
It was Tony.
Did Tony catch it?
Yes.
That's right. Yeah,
Yes.
it was. Oh, so Chiefs lose to the Bills. Bills go to 7-6 and are in a tie for the last wild card spot, although they're not in based on tiebreakers. The Chiefs dropped to 8-5, and that's where the Jaguars are now because they lost a terrible game today to Cleveland and Joe Flacco, who's been named the starter for the rest of the season. Surprise, surprise. I do think Cleveland's playing with fool's gold. I don't think you. Now I know they at times have an elite defense.
Yeah, the defense has been really
at
good.
times. They've also had times that they've looked bad.
Yeah.
Now I believe Denzel Ward was supposed to be back today, or if not today, I think next week. So they're getting healthier. Myles Garrett's having a ridiculous season. But can you win with that offense and Joe Flacco? Like he's how old is he? He's got to be close to 40,
Like 38,
39.
yeah.
Hasn't played a lot over the last few years. Got called mid-season to come in and help the Browns after their quarterback injuries. Will Cleveland make the playoffs? Possibly, but
Right, but look, is Joe Flacco the second best quarterback in that division right now? Yeah. Today he was.
yeah, Lamar's obviously number one.
Right.
Flacco's two. I don't know. Drake Browning's looked pretty good for the Bengals, though.
Yeah.
I saw that he had gotten a thumb or a finger injury.
Yeah.
But I think he
kept playing, yeah.
But Browning's been looking good. The Bengals beat the Colts
He
today.
He has.
So,
But the fact that we can discuss it,
right, it's
right.
But that plays part to a bigger issue and something
Yes.
that we've talked about. The play across the NFL and NCAA, we feel is down. It has not been great football. There's a lot of sacks, a lot of interceptions, a lot of turnovers, sloppy play, missed tackles. It's pretty bad. And we saw how many non-starter quarterbacks start games today across the league because of injuries.
Yeah.
Let's rewind, go to Thursday, because congratulations to the New England Patriots on earning win number 3 in the second weekend of December, which may push my dad's prediction of 5-12 to the brink now if they're going to roll off a few wins here. I did not want them to win that game. I wanted the Steelers to win that. New England could possibly play spoiler, I think. Not for my Dolphins. The Dolphins already beat them twice. But what is your opinion on New England before we get to the Pittsburgh disaster?
It's a dumpster fire. It's bad. The offense is really bad, and I thought that bringing in an offensive coordinator would solve some of the problems. It hasn't really. I don't know if the problem is the quarterbacks. Like Bailey Zappi again got a win. Like there were some people calling for him to get a nod earlier this year. I think Mac Jones is as good as done there. You know what I mean? Like I don't see it
there
really
seems
happening.
to be no confidence. Kind of almost like Zach Wilson light. You
Right,
know?
right.
He has probably had the job maybe for more games. Well, they're probably pretty comparable in terms of games started and wins. Mac Jones probably has more wins though than Zach Wilson, but
Yeah.
it's a lost year for New England. People are talking about, is this the end of Bill Belichick? I have no idea what to think about that. It was a terrible game for the Steelers. Again, 2 weeks in a row, you losing to teams that are what, 2-10 or 2-9?
First time ever that a team that had that had a winning record lost back-to-back games to a team with two or fewer
wins. And they were both at home.
Yeah. And here's the thing, I know they had some quarterback issues, but you have Trubisky there. It's not like you have some no-name guy as your backup. Like
Right.
doesn't make a lot of sense.
It's
to me.
weird. And I know people were like, after they lost to the Cardinals, we're like, oh, Tomlin Steelers are always good for one of those head-scratching losses. Now you got 2 in a row.
Yep.
And I saw someone was like, is it now time for the Steelers to move on? Like, is this as far as Tomlin can take them? The Steelers organization hasn't been a group, a franchise to do things like that.
Right.
For better or worse.
Right.
But Tomlin's in year 17 or something like that, has
yeah.
never had a losing season. And this year, actually, I think was going better than people thought until this 2-game losing streak.
Right.
Because they were sitting at
Right.
7-4, and you're thinking
Yeah.
9-4.
Right.
We're 9-4 after these 2 games.
Yeah.
And sitting pretty for a wild card berth, possibly pushing for the division if Baltimore stumbles because of Cleveland and Cincinnati's questionable quarterback situation.
Right.
But now you lost 2 games to teams you shouldn't have lost to.
Right.
Is Pickett the answer out there?
No.
Are they going to be quarterback shopping again?
Well, it's hard to tell because, like,
He's always injured.
he is always injured, and you're trying to figure out what you got. You finally moved on from the offensive coordinator, which was a disaster.
And things look good the first game in terms of
Right.
yards, not
Right.
points, because they only put up,
Right.
13 or 16 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not getting better in Pittsburgh. It's still bad in New England, even with the win. Who knows what's going on in the NFC South? Because I think do you have now 3 teams at 6 and 7
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that? So the Saints, Falcons, and Buccaneers are all 6 and 7. Tampa Bay came from behind to beat Atlanta today.
Mm-hmm.
One of those teams gonna host a playoff game in a few weeks. Is there one? Does one team scare? Like, honestly, the Eagles could end up playing one of the teams.
Yeah.
Is there one of those 3 teams that actually scares you though? You've already beaten Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah, I'd say Tampa and New Orleans give me the most pause, just because New Orleans has some offensive weapons, and they can play good defense at times. Tampa, again, they have some offensive weapons like Mike Evans and some of the, and just a gunslinger quarterback.
Yeah, that is
Like-
such a wild. All 3 quarterbacks though are such
Right.
wild cards
Yeah,
because they can be
Desmond
great
Ritter
or
too.
terrible.
Right, exactly.
Honestly, if it were me,
I'd probably say. Go
I
ahead,
was going to
go
say
ahead.
Atlanta, mostly
Yeah.
because you have to go there.
Right.
The place I'd want to go is Tampa Bay. I don't want to go to Atlanta or New Orleans. I feel
Yeah.
like there's a better home field advantage in Atlanta or New
No, I
Orleans
agree.
than in Tampa. Tampa, though, you have the weather element that can be level the playing field.
Yeah.
All 3 quarterbacks are boom or bust. I feel that Atlanta is the best coach of the 3, though, and I think Arthur Smith gets more out of his players than Dennis Allen or
I also
Todd
think
Bowles.
I also think looking at like some of the matchups, Bijan Robinson would be a disaster matchup for
Against the Eagles linebackers.
For the Eagles linebackers, yeah.
Unless you're going to put Byard on them,
Right.
you know.
My gosh, they keep bailing out the Cowboys here.
The defensive holding.
It's going to be pass interference,
Pass
but
interference.
on the Cowboys touchdown, the flag, they threw it for a hold, and then they decided
Jeez.
no, it wasn't a hold. So like they threw a flag and then picked it up. That always is weird, but now
Is
the Eagles.
it more weird though that when the play stops and possession changes and then they drop a flag?
Oh my gosh!
Little inside Wilson football.
That was
Love
wild.
to bring that back up. Today was the banquet, by the way, so congratulations to
yeah.
the class of 2024, the Wilson senior football players receiving their jackets and awards and whatnot. Couldn't make it there. Had our shop Christmas party, which was a lot of fun, but couldn't also make it then to the Wilson football one. But so, what other takeaways, Justin, from NFL action today? I'm trying to think about a few of the other games. Jets got a win over the Texans.
Yeah, and
CJ
Stroud got
concussion.
hurt. Right.
You could so
But-
it's very wet in the Northeast. And when CJ Stroud got hit and fell, his head snapped and hit the turf, and
Yeah,
you could
you could
see
see it, right.
You could
Yeah.
see the water shoot off the turf.
Right.
Hopefully, he's okay, but certainly going to be in concussion protocol, and I feel like would be doubtful to play next week.
I think only 2 players now, since like the updated concussion protocols, have come back and played the following week.
So the Texans are falling flat at the wrong time near the end of the season when they need to be getting wins to stay pace with the other teams that are they 7-6 now? I think they fell to 7-6
so.
with the Bills. The Texans are a fun story. I don't know if they have enough to get to the finish line to make it this year. Does Cincinnati have enough to claw their way into it without Joe Burrow? What's going? I mean, I feel like odds are you got to put it on Buffalo to sneak in there at the 6 or 7 spot, just because of all those teams that are trying to find a spot, as well as the Colts. The Bills obviously have the most talent.
Well, that was a bad loss for the Jags today.
Bad loss for the Jags.
But you could see it coming. Like, just I don't know. They just seem to be a few pieces away. I feel like Trevor Lawrence at times makes great plays, and at times you're like, what is he doing?
Right. All right, let's see. Why did he jump to week 10? Oh, that's annoying. All right, so we talked Patriots, Steelers. We just mentioned Texans, Jets. Jets beat them bad, 30-6. We mentioned Ravens, Rams. That one was in overtime on a punt return touchdown that I still contend. I'd like to see the replay because I swear there was a very flagrant block in the back that wasn't called, and no one mentioned it on the broadcast.
Now, the only thing I can think of in terms of why it wasn't called was there was another guy like towards the middle of the field. Was that may have been between the guy who's normally going to throw that flag and the guy who pushed. So, like, I'm thinking maybe he didn't see it, but like from the camera angle, it was pretty clear.
But that's another one of those, like, why is there not a sky judge system that literally changed the game?
Yeah,
because it was the last play.
Yeah,
it ended the game.
Yeah,
and if there's that blatant of a rules violation, you feel like you don't want the game to end like that, but it did. So Saints beat the Panthers today to get to 6-7. 28-6 over Carolina, who's just awful. They haven't looked any better since firing Frank Reich and other members of the staff going away. Bengals upset the Colts 34-14. Indianapolis did not look good today. That's a bad loss for them to a Cincinnati team that now has won 2 in a row with Jake Browning.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay pulled it out against Atlanta 29-25. We talked about that one to even themselves with the Saints at 6-7. NFC South is a crapshoot. And we mentioned Joe Flacco and the Browns beating the Jaguars 31-27. That's a bad loss for Jacksonville. I know it was on the road. I know Cleveland has a very good defense, but you got to expect more on a team that is supposed to be challenging for the 1 seed. Now has lost 2 bad games in a row.
We're at that point where it's like, all right, you got to start looking at like what your team's doing. And those are games, like if you're playoff teams, those are games you got to win, right? Like those are games you got to win.
And speaking of another team that's falling flat at the wrong time, what's with the Lions losing in Chicago 28-13?
After losing on Thanksgiving Day?
Well, they almost lost to Chicago, 3 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. Then they lose on Thanksgiving Day to the Packers. They nearly cough up a 21-point lead to the Saints last week. They do get the win there, but they lose in Chicago today 28-13.
Right.
Not a good look, and it opens the door for Green Bay to sneak back into the conversation for the division. San Francisco took care of business against Seattle today, who had Drew Lock at quarterback, not Geno Smith, 28-16. Deebo Samuel had another monster day. 49ers look like that team from the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens if they can keep that rolling.
Had a player ejected for the second straight week, though.
So does Kyle Shanahan now get suspended? Because like a lot of high school rules are, like if you have that many, and I think it's in one game or something like that. Your coach has to miss a game. So I don't think the NFL has any kind of rule like that. But what a barn burner in Las Vegas today.
Oh, my gosh.
Vikings and Josh Dobbs get it done 3-0. I didn't get to watch any of that game. I'm not disappointed.
You didn't miss anything.
3-0. I saw a tweet. There's like only like 5 other games in NFL history since this in the Super Bowl era have finished with 3 or fewer points as the total amount of points scored. The Dolphins have played in 2 of them. Lost both of them. And one I can remember because it was in Pittsburgh in torrential downpour.
Yes. That's the one where the punt
just sticks into the mud. They lost to Pittsburgh 3-0 the year that they went 1-15. Broncos.
That wasn't the year you were there, right?
No. I was there the year before in 2006 when the Steelers are coming off their Super Bowl win. They had the Thursday night opener against Byron Leftwich and the Dolphins and Nick Saban in 2000s. Thanks for bringing that memory to the surface here, Justin.
Nick Saban, Dolphins coach. When's he going to the Ring of Honor?
Where, Michigan State, or LSU,
gosh.
or Alabama? Broncos beat the Chargers 24-7. Denver is hanging out right there. I think they're 7-6 as well, and in the thick of the playoff race. We mentioned Buffalo over Kansas City 20-17, and the Eagles are playing right now against Dallas in Dallas and are down 10-0 nearing the end of the first quarter. So one of the other things that came up between us, but also mentioned by your mom, is how she's so disgusted with the overall officiating this year. I honestly feel like it's no different than any other year. I feel like we're always mad about the officiating. Nothing ever seems to change.
Right.
The NFL has ways to do so, but they don't want to. A lot of talk is about the officials should be full-time, and I agree with part of that, but would it solve all the problems? No, you have to be able to everyone's human, and that's the thing we tend to forget. Also, we forget that they don't have high-definition cameras and slow-motion replay in their glasses as they're standing on the field, which is why something like a sky judge that can help buzz down to the ref, hey, we need to take a look at this. That's probably what should be happening. I know people complain about, it's going to slow the game down, but I want them to get the calls right.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about they're examining the line every play for holding, but I'm talking about if they call something that shouldn't have been called, or they miss something like a block in the back on a punt return that ends up finalizing the game, that's a kind of call that should be made.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to make any effort to change it, but it would be nice to see some effort there.
No, they're too busy worried about quarterback sneaks. That's their big concern.
So, yes, I think everyone is very disgusted by the officiating, but I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to make any changes.
Right. Well, I come back to the same thing. Is I think part of the issue is you have guys that are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s sometimes.
Yeah.
Trying to officiate the best athletes in the world.
Right.
It's just really hard.
It's very hard. It's a very difficult job. No one wants to do it really at any level unless you're getting compensated for it nicely. And even then, sometimes it's not enough. We're seeing shortages across Little League and high schools, not just in the state of Pennsylvania, but across the nation. It's a demanding, grueling job. There's a lot of nuance to it. And, why would you want to do it?
Right.
It's kind of what I asked myself, and I would hate to see sports go away because of it, but it's a thankless job.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different when you get to the NFL because you're
Right.
being compensated, but it's a demanding lifestyle, and there's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. But I do think that they're missing way too many calls that need to be corrected.
Well, and I think part of the frustration, and we saw this with baseball too, is the lack of accountability for missed calls. It seems, or the perception of lack of accountability for missed calls.
Right.
It just seems to be frustrating. And you see it everywhere. You see it in the NBA, where Scott Foster hates Chris Paul and ejects him last week for nothing.
Yeah. Thankfully,
that,
we don't see that in the NFL.
Right, right.
At least it's not on the surface. It's not visualized. Right. You don't hear that, but in baseball and the NBA, you definitely see refs that want to make it about them.
Oh, absolutely.
Refs or umps that want to make it about them. They want to focus on them.
And I am a little torn because sometimes, the coach in me is you have to adjust. You have to adjust. And sometimes I'm maybe these guys are just so stubborn they're not adjusting. But the Thursday night game a couple weeks ago, when it was Seattle, and there were 19 penalties, and it was borderline unwatchable because it was so frustrating because nothing happened. And Al Michaels is just ripping into just equally, not for one team. He's just this is brutal because anytime anything exciting happened, it got wiped out by a penalty.
Yeah. Oh boy. So I think. Well, how are you feeling right now? I'm down 10-0 in the second quarter.
Well, not good, and I know they don't convert here. So.
Oh, you know that already?
Yeah. So.
Well, you can watch it live.
Right. Right. Oh man, he was open too.
He held on to it a little too long. All right, so are they going to punt, or are we getting a
they'll-
tush push here?
No,
brotherly shove.
2 yards. 2 yards. I'm guessing they punt. I don't know. But
Is it a
I'm
long
guessing they
two
punt.
or a short two? Do they only do it on 4th and 1?
4th and
feel
1
like
they
they
do
could-
it. If it's 3rd and 2, they sometimes will do it.
That was
It
against
was good
Deron
coverage.
Bland, Defensive Player of the Year. Deron.
Yeah, gosh.
That's talk about boom or bust, man.
Well, we saw the same thing with Trayvon Diggs.
Right.
It was the exact same thing. Like
Lots of interceptions, but also very little
right,
coverage.
right.
So, Eagles specific here. Dallas tonight. Do they have Seattle next week?
Yeah, Eagles have Dallas next week.
Fake. Wide open. What is that guy doing?
He turned before the ball went. Right? Like he turned
That
his
was
head
Jalen
before the ball
Tolbert.
left.
That's a wide receiver playing DB. Whew, that's not great.
You got to make that count for points. Eagles drove down the first time and then Hurts fumbled at the 21.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
On a run, he had run for 10 yards and
that's
then
a
fumbled.
good fake by the punter, by man.
Yeah.
Zacchaeus.
Yep. St. Joe's Prep.
God, you got to bring that up. Got to bring that up. Won another state championship. I think is that their 3rd in a row.
I don't know.
And
I think it's 4 out of 5,
made
and
it
they've won 8 total.
Well, and they've made
Something
it
like that.
10 in the last 12
Right.
years or something like that. Ridiculous. Absolutely absurd. All right. Well, you know what? We didn't get to talk about Penn State news.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless you have something else NFL to say, we can talk about some schedules here and there. But Penn State is playing in the Peach Bowl for the first time ever.
Yeah.
They'll have a chance to be the first team ever to win all 6
Right.
New Year's 6 bowls.
Right.
Coach Franklin is replacing both coordinators as he fired Mike Yursich after the disappointment to Michigan. Got Howell and Sider co-OCs at the moment, but they brought in
Yeah, I don't even know how to say it.
Koltanicki
Yeah, something like that.
from Kansas, who just
Right.
won like offensive coordinator or assistant of the year
Yeah,
or something
yeah.
like that. He's done a fabulous job for Leipold at Kansas. Who I can't believe he's still there, man. Lance
He
Leipold.
signed a big extension.
Just
there,
felt
I
like
think,
he
too.
would be going somewhere. But
Yeah.
so Koltanicki is off to Penn State. He will assume the role of offensive coordinator after the bowl game. You know, he's there kind of observe and figure things out. 6th offensive coordinator for Coach Franklin. Most of them have been fired.
Right.
The only
Right.
one that moved on by choice was Joe Moorhead,
Right.
who got a head coaching job at Mississippi State.
Yeah.
It hasn't been great in that regard, and people question, you know, is that because it's a bad hire, it's a bad scheme, they don't have the athletes, the recruits, or is it because Franklin's getting involved too much on something he shouldn't be involved in? I know there's a lot of stuff tossed around.
He just dropped it.
Yeah, he did.
Although his feet weren't in bounds anyway. So that would have been more
Silver
frustrating.
lining.
Right, yeah.
Defensively, though, Manny Diaz is off after 2 years with 2 incredible Penn State
Yeah.
defenses while he
Yeah.
was there. Now, they did have the personnel the last 2 years to do
Right,
that, but
right.
his scheme was fantastic.
Yes.
Even in the losses to Ohio State and Michigan the last year, maybe not the Michigan game last year, but the Ohio State games and the Michigan game this year.
Well,
the
to be
defense
fair,
was
Michigan
keeping
knew what
with
was
it.
coming last year. Like, so
Ooh, yeah. The Ohio State game this year, honestly, the defense had turned the game on its head with a defensive touchdown,
Yeah.
which then got
nullified.
So Manny Diaz was fantastic. I don't know a single Penn State
I was
fan
thinking
that
this.
didn't like
I was
him.
thinking this year, and I don't know that it would have mattered because the offense was so anemic at times. But it was, if the games were flipped, if we had Ohio State at Penn State and we had Michigan on the road, I still think we lose to Michigan. But do you think we beat Ohio State if we have them at home this year? I don't know. I don't
one
know.
Of those, well,
But-
we can ask. We can ask the College Football Playoff Committee because they know.
Right? Yeah.
There's no way they say Penn State beats Ohio State.
No.
So
But yeah, so Manny Diaz out the door, Mike Yursich out the door. Different reasons.
different reasons. Yeah,
But
one got promoted, one got shown the
Yeah.
door.
I'm happy for Manny Diaz. I feel like that was a really good hire by Franklin.
Yeah, fortuitous. good timing worked out.
Right. And I feel like that was a tough one because Pry had been with him forever. And he had to get the right guy because you had the talent there, so you couldn't waste it.
Oh, that was a home run hire.
And I mean, you hate to see him go, but like he was very clear from the start, like he wanted to be a head coach,
and that's why I think so many Penn Staters are okay with it because he said, "I want to be a head coach."
Right,
again. Like,
right.
You said multiple times.
You just have to appreciate it.
Should be grateful and thankful that we got 2 years,
Yeah,
and not just.
I was
one.
a little surprised that he went to Duke. Like,
well, see, I don't know what other schools maybe interviewed him.
No, and I agree, but then I also look, man, like you got a Power 5 job at a good school in the ACC, so. I feel like if you take a job in the Big Ten, road's going to be pretty tough. If you take a job in the SEC, road's going to be tough. And I'm not saying Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore.
Well, technically, it does.
The Big 12 doesn't play
Just
defense.
Two teams.
So, like,
right. But that's what I mean. Like, if he could go to a Big 12 school and play defense, could he win a lot of games? I guess if you have the right offensive coordinator.
Right.
Paul's, I think, had enough with Eagles fans on Twitter. Did you see his?
No, I
his
didn't.
tweet just now. Did you see that ref grab Brown's arm and make him drop the ball inside the 10-yard line? I can't believe the official did that. I tried to. You missed it last week. I tried to get Paul to tell us his fandoms.
Oh, he wouldn't do it.
But he did he did
okay.
open the door a little bit that he was grew up a Yankees fan, which I've said to you in the past.
Yes.
I think Paul is a closet Yankees fan, and I didn't say that to him, pointed out, but that I've said that to you. I was like, I think Paul was a Yankees fan or was a Yankees fan.
Right.
He's been doing this, for basically 30 years, 25 plus years of, you can't have a fandom. You can't let that show.
Right.
But he was a fan of Penn State growing up, and obviously Syracuse is of there, and he doesn't hide that. But he did confirm that he was a Yankees fan, or he said his dad and twin brother were Yankees fans, and I feel like he had a soft spot for the Yankees.
That's fair. I did see that he was mad at maybe the Jaguars for ruining one of his bets last week, and he's like, I hope they lose. They hope they get crushed today or something.
Well,
like that.
I mean, they didn't get crushed, but they did lose. So
right.
Yeah. So the Eagles got a field goal.
I do feel like Paul's rooting interests are very clear. He'll tell you who he's taking now.
he also he tells it like it is, or he tells it how he sees it. He doesn't have time for fans being fans. Like when they're not being objective.
Right.
Which is fine because I try my best to do that too. It doesn't always work.
Right.
Especially I feel like more with Penn State. It's harder for me to be objective. With Penn State more often than not. Although I was yelling for them to fire I was texting you and Adam when the way they looked against Michigan, I was like, he needs to go.
Right.
And we don't know if he was the biggest part of that problem. But it wasn't working, and it's 2+ years, nearly 3 years.
And so here's another telltale thing though that's really weird to me, and like this is me maybe looking into things, maybe not. You never know, but you look. I saw this today. Penn State only had 3 players enter the transfer portal.
Yeah,
as of right now,
the backup punter, a reserve,
because the other punter's coming back,
which we've just found out, for 2 years, not just one, for 2 years, and he's one of the best.
He was a good punter
in the
now,
nation.
right?
So the backup punter's leaving, a reserve DB/wide receiver, unfortunately an NFL legacy, Donald Driver's son Christian.
Yeah.
Though I feel like he's probably going to go closer to home because I think he's from Texas.
Yes.
And then a walk-on, right?
Right.
So Penn State's not losing anyone.
Which I
notes
think to me, like, because that's where, like,
at this moment,
when you've lost both coordinators and you only have 3 kids enter the transfer portal, that was a surprise to me. And I take it as a good sign. Now you have some kids that are leaving for the pros, but you also knew that was coming too. And again, I can't.
Right. We got 2 confirmed so far.
Right.
But one of them is playing in the Peach Bowl, Theo Johnson.
Right. And the other, I think may find his way into the first round. Like
Chop Robinson.
Right.
Haven't heard anything about Isaac if he's gonna. I mean, I know he's playing going in the Senior Bowl. He won't be back.
Right.
But is he gonna play in the Peach Bowl? We don't know.
Right.
Fashanu.
Yeah, he's.
Olu. Has he announced if he's playing in the Peach Bowl or not, though?
I don't think he has.
Yeah, I don't think so. Obviously, he's leaving.
Right.
He'd be crazy not to not go to the NFL 2 years in a row.
Right.
When you're projected top 10, top 5 pick.
Right.
That would be unprecedented.
Well, and so I saw people talking about this, but I don't know if it was Ross or someone posted about this. About there's rumors that NIL deals may be like getting close to like $20 million for Marvin Harrison if he were to stay at Ohio State. But somebody's like, yeah, but he's gonna get that on his pro deal, and every year he doesn't go delays his second contract.
Right.
So he's deferring his
you need to make
big
sure you're
money
talking
contract.
to the right people.
Right. And now here's the other thing that is also a wild card. Marvin Harrison Jr. may not need the money because his dad was an NFL Hall of Famer.
Playing
Now,
with Peyton Manning.
right. So now it's not that simple, and
you risk injuries.
well, and
all
at
that
the same
stuff.
time, do what you want to do.
Right,
But
and it's easy to say as we're sitting here as a not even quarter star recruit in anything,
right.
Not listed in any database anywhere. But I like to look at it. I want to win for that college team too. And then we see guys do it. I know people kind of rag on them and be like, they should have just gone and took the money, they came back and like, look what happened to their draft stock or they got injured. But some people just want to win. Some people want to finish their college degree. Some people want to play in a special bowl game, or they want to play for a national championship. That does mean it's not always about the money, which I respect.
Right.
Sometimes it feels crazy.
Right.
But I do respect that. I love that Theo Johnson's like, yeah, I'm not coming back next year, but I'm going to play in the Peach Bowl. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
And I don't hold anything against Chop for not playing because I also understand the business decision. Do I like it? No, I don't like the opt-outs. It sucks for college football, for college fans, for playing for. But I understand it. And I mentioned it to you and Adam in our group chat about how I feel like now with NIL that I feel like there should be a way to come to a financial agreement on an insurance policy to help make that an easier decision for people. Because by and large, I feel like most of the players do want to play in the bowl, but they're making the right financial decision because of the health of them to move on. Right. But if there's a hey, for this amount of money, this NIL group will buy you this insurance policy that if you get injured leading up to or in the bowl game, you'll get, whatever number you want to throw on it, and maybe it could be like they could submit paperwork to the NFL draft evaluation and they could say, we expect you to be picked around this. This is the signing bonus and the contract that you could possibly get. And you'd be like, I want an insurance policy for that. Would you get more people to play? I feel like you probably would. Right. And I know that's an oversimplification. There's a lot of stuff that would go into that. But that's something I feel like should be on the table at these places. It would be great to hear that more players than not play in the Peach Bowl. I know last year was an easier decision for a lot of them because it was the Rose Bowl. Right. So I was one, and the only one that didn't play was Joey Porter Jr. Right. Everyone that was healthy, because Parker Washington didn't play. Right. Had a great game for the Jaguars last week. I don't know.
He scored another touchdown
today. So he's stepping up, which is great. Great to see. But I'd like to see more people play in the bowl games. Hopefully, Penn State doesn't have too many opt out and play in the Peach Bowl, because it would be nice to win that game that you've never played in, be the first team to win all New Year's 6 games, and beat an SEC team, which I don't think we glossed over, Penn State's opponent. So I don't know what to... I saw a lot of people complaining, well, one, that Penn State got in over Oklahoma. Right. And people were saying, well, Oklahoma had a better not better record. They were both 10-2, right? Right,
but they beat Texas. That was their big
Texas,
thing.
Right. But then they also get destroyed or they lost to someone that they shouldn't have.
They lost to a couple teams they shouldn't have. Yeah.
But Penn State's playing Ole Miss and Ohio State's playing Missouri. Or no. Yes. Is that right? No, who's playing Missouri?
Ohio State is playing Missouri because Missouri may wear their block M. Like somebody said, Missouri should wear their block M on the thing. And I think it was the Missouri coach that was like, it was the Missouri coach that was like, when he was on the phone with ESPN, was like, oh, hold on, I'm getting a call from Connor Stallions.
So I, generally once the bowl games come around, especially if they're not to continue in the national championship race, the college football playoff. I want the Big Ten teams to win. I want Ohio State to beat Missouri.
Oh, I agree.
And I want Penn State to beat Ole Miss. I do love Lane Kiffin, like him wishing Chop Robinson well for opting out and not playing, and then congratulating Manny Diaz for getting like that. Great, like all in fun trolling,
right?
Like, I love
fun.
it. Like that's just funny. It is. It's I know there's things about Lane Kiffin a lot of people don't like and whatever. Like that was just funny. I really enjoyed that, but I don't know. I know some people think Missouri's going to beat up on Ohio State, and which is bonkers to me. But like now they don't have McCord, they probably won't have Harrison. Like
right.
Penn State down Chop Robinson, but if Isaac plays and Sutton, obviously Dennis Sutton is still playing because he's coming back next year. You still have Abdul Carter. You still have both running backs. You still have a quarterback that hopefully can find himself as a former 5-star. Maybe Penn State has an easier path to beat the SEC opponent now. I don't know. I feel like a lot of what I saw online was people not giving the Big Ten much of a chance, which this wasn't a great year for the SEC, so it seems a little arrogant to think that way.
Right. I agree.
All right, Justin, you have anything else to say? Anything else you want to add?
No, not really. It'll be interesting to kind of see. I said about the Penn State offensive coordinator hire, like I was excited about Yurcich. I thought he was going to do really good things. He had come from a couple offenses that had done really exciting things, and they did not. It did not work out. So
yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic. Like
right.
I'm hopeful that it works out. And maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, we've got to replace him because he left for a head coaching job.
Going to be a head coach somewhere, not being fired.
Right.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah,
that's the hope. Go the Manny Diaz route, not the Shiroka or Yurcich route.
Right.
Which just both were disappointing, unfortunately. But all right, so Eagles-Cowboys still fighting in the second quarter. Dallas looking to add some more points to the board. So head over to NBC and check that out. And
it looks like I may not be up late tonight after all. So there's that.
We'll be back in 1 week to talk about NFL Week 15. Then we'll be off for 2 weeks, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. We'll be back for Week 18 and talking about the looming playoffs, which is crazy. 2024 right around the corner.
That's wild.
All right, I think that's it for us this week on the Joe Mays and J-Raff show. I guess we'll see you on Sunday, December 17th. Same time, same place. Check us out there. So for Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening to episode 388 of the Joe Mays and J-Raff show.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff show, brought to you by Mays Sandwich Shop. Woo-hoo! You can watch each weekly episode live on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Google Play. You can also rate and review us on many of these platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you. Send your emails to the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. The Joe Mays and J-Raff show is a part of the JMNJR Radio Network, home to other productions such as the Bulldog Hour, Tangents with Friends, and Nat Chats with Dad. Until next time.